I'm Nayantara Rai, working from home. Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest today on Startup Central teaches us a very valuable lesson, and that is, age is just a number. He turned 64 years old just a few months back. He might shoot me for admitting that on live television, but there's so much to learn from him. He hates being called a serial entrepreneur because that means a serial entrepreneur starts a company only to sell. He likes to build, scale, and repeat. My next guest, our first guest today on the show is Ronnie Screwvala. We're featuring him as the chairman and co-founder of UpGrad, a day after UpGrad announced that it's acquiring a company to enter into the business of test preparation. Now, UpGrad is hoping to disrupt EdTech with making us all learners for life, targeting 18-year-olds to 48-year-olds, arming them with degrees that they can actually use and not doing just time pass. Ronnie Screwvala, thank you so much for joining us here on Startup Central. This is Nayantara Rai. I understand you have at least 4 acquisitions on the cards, and the first one has been announced. Is it a game changer?
Nayantara, firstly, I just thank you for having me on the show, and hi. And I just want to clarify one thing that you mentioned there. Serial entrepreneur is not a tag I like, but one thing is for sure. There's only one company that I've built for 20 years and then divested in at the right time. Otherwise, I'm someone who really sticks it out and stays the long haul. So I don't have a tag of building a company only to sell it. Nobody ever builds a company only to sell it. Otherwise, you're not an entrepreneur. So I just wanted to clarify that now and forever. For us, build versus buy is always the best way to go as far as UpGrad is concerned. For the last 5 years, we've built something very unique in terms of the learning experience that we have. However, there are analogous things in the entire field of education, because we see UpGrad specifically in the higher education space, and you very finely defined it as the 18 to 48. We want to be a lifelong partner. But specifically what we want to do is be a conglomerate to the education system, because we believe that outside of working professionals, degrees, there is an entire new segment that we can do. So all our acquisitions lined up, including the one we announced yesterday, which is the GATE Academy. That one is in test prep. These are all very analogous to the core group of 18 to 48 and their ability to upskill, upgrade, and uplearn.
Okay, so you have 4 acquisitions lined up, and I actually had said, Ronnie Screwvala, that you hate the tag serial entrepreneur, that you believe in scaling and building and repeating that. So what is it that you're planning to do with UpGrad? I believe this is just the beginning, and you're really committed to this at a time when billions of dollars are pouring into EdTech startups in the corona world. UpGrad has said nothing doing, no external funding. How have you not been tempted by all of that money that is pouring into this space?
The last I heard it was in hundreds of millions, not in billions of dollars, number one. 2, education doesn't require that kind of capital. That's just my personal view on the situation. There's a lot you can do from that. And I think we're very proud that for the first 5 years, we've grown it as a sort of founder-funded company. That doesn't mean we've been bootstrapped. I think we've gone at it in a very, very strong manner. We've been seeing 100% growth every year. Just this year, we're seeing about 200 and 250% growth. And we'll end this year with about a 1,200 crore annual run rate. So we've done that in a very meticulous and in a very proper manner. To your specific question of fundraise, I think it is a means to an end. I think most people look at this as a badge of honor. And I think the media glamorizes that even further by calling it a unicorn, and then more alphabets that get added to that. I think the core of education is one where it's not about the capital, it's about the motive, it's about the impact, it's about outcomes. And that's what we're focused on. Having said that, we do believe, and we are in the process of doing an external fundraise, because we think this is the right time now for the company to take its next thing between our acquisitions, between our diversifications into degrees, that we will empower and power multiple universities with, and our international expansion. But by and large, our vision is to be a lifelong partner for learners and working professionals and college people, not just in India, but around the world. And frankly, I think there are 1 or 2 other companies also having similar goals to really feel that in EdTech, you don't need geographical boundaries, and therefore your ambitions can be global. And I'm not someone to just say global and international for the sake of it. I think it has to have meaning for what it needs to be done, and we need to have the similar kind of outcomes in each of the countries we go into.
You know, in fact, just a few minutes back, a deal was announced that was to do with another edtech company, Unacademy, which now has a valuation of $2 billion. But from January to September of this year, you've seen 76 deals in the edtech space for nearly $1.5 billion. You're now saying that maybe UpGrad will look at external funding. You're also giving us headlines of how you want to go overseas and enter the business of degrees. What does that mean exactly? Because if you're in edtech, and I'm asking this as a viewer as well, and as maybe a consumer, wouldn't you be anyway getting a degree at the end of it? So what does that exactly mean when you say you're going to be entering degrees?
Firstly, to your first part of the question, we are under no peer pressure because that much of deals have been announced. We're in the edtech business and we want to grow that. So no peer pressure. We think this is the appropriate time for us to raise funds, and we'll continue to do that as and when we think necessary. For the working professionals, you get certifications, you get diplomas, and you get degrees. I think the focus now on degrees is because a lot of, in India, the entire Education Act has changed, and universities today, including the top 100 universities, can go out and give their degrees. Now, degrees are in the post-graduation, but they're also in the bachelor's and undergrad. And we believe that the tech platform that we've created and our ability and the learning experience that we've invested in allows us to power these universities to launch their bachelor's and undergrad and even postgrad degrees. So that is really where we move the needle, because working professionals is a large demographic. It's about 40 million, but when we get to the degree market, we get into a very, very large addressable market.
So what kind of degrees are we talking about? Can you give us some details?
So I think we just launched an LLM, which is in law. Degrees in terms of MBAs is something we've been doing for a fair period of time. So that's more on the post-graduation and in the working professional scale. And in the bachelor's, it'll be pretty much everything that you've got there. The unique part of this, I think, and it should be a game changer for India, is because a lot of people in a socioeconomic background don't normally go and complete their even undergrad degrees and get into their work. Some of them have the option now to possibly work part-time, but also do these degrees online, because online now for the first time has got the respectability, the acceptability, and the urgency of it to happen. And the second one is you can choose the university, because otherwise, if you wanted to go with a Mumbai University or a Chandigarh University or anything else, you would need to move to that city. It would be a boarding and lodging. Depending on your age group and your gender, you may not have got the permission from your family to do that. But today, all India, young students and young people have the option now, because of the new change in the regulation, the acceptability of technology, to be able to do a degree from a university without necessarily moving to that city.
Oh, absolutely. And, that's what's happening in the virtual world as well. But, Ronnie Screwvala, if I could ask you this one question. Therefore, will this entire premium on college admissions, being an alumni, the entire process, and what it means that if I went to this prestigious university, I must be so good and so talented, etc. Is that all set to go, in your opinion?
I don't think in most cases, as you've seen in many of the sectors, and I've worked in one which is media, nothing goes, it gets augmented. Universities and offline education, by definition, is a selective process. You have an installed capacity of maybe 2,000 students, 5,000 students, 10,000 students, and then 100,000 people apply, and you select your 2,000. So it's a selective process. The big impact, and especially for a country like India, for online education, is it's a lot more of an eliminative process, which means for every 10,000 students that will apply, the probability is 9,000 will get accepted because it's going to be a life-changing part for them. They wouldn't be able to do it in any other ways. They may need to continue in their work and cannot take a year off. And the 1,000 that we would advise saying you're not yet ready, you won't be able to get the maximum understanding of this course. So why don't you do this top up and then come to us? So I think there will always be the selective process of learning education, degrees, diplomas, and accreditation. And there will be the eliminative process. And I think the two worlds can join up and meet and really create something which for working professionals and young people who are looking for this to be a game changer.
You know, one thing that I wanted to ask you was, you're making us all learners for life, particularly when we are maybe mid-career, like you said, 18 to 48-year-olds. Can you share with us which is the more popular age that signs up for courses on UpGrad? Because that'll give us a fantastic insight also at what phase of life are people willing to upskill and to learn more.
Yes, you started the course. Started this conversation by deliberating my age. I'm a lifelong learner at 64. So the 18 to 48 is just one bracket. It doesn't mean we're going to ignore 50 and 55-year-olds, and there are actually some people who do that. But I think the core sweet spot of people in the working professional scale is from about 28 years of old to 35 years of old. People who've been in a job from 4 years to 10 years in a job. That's where they feel that they rushed into something because for whatever reasons. In 2 to 3 years is when the first time they're realizing what they really want to do. Because our college system here, as great as it may be, does not give us those multiple choices. You can't take 3 different courses. You have to decide. You're either going to do commerce, or you're going to do engineering, or you're going to do science. So if that eclectic mix we don't get at that very early stage, for us to choose, okay, now I've got a good grounding and I know what I need to do. So career counseling really happens midway in your working professional life. That's when you see the maximum amount of redundancy. So that's pretty much the birth of UpGrad, the essence of UpGrad, the sort of UpGrad as far as we're concerned. And that sweet spot is that. But the reason I insist that it's lifelong learning is there's a different crossroad you reach when you're 38. There's a different crossroad you reach when you're 48. It's not just about a short course in learning. It is about sometimes you want to take a career change. But the key part for us today is that we anticipate careers of tomorrow. So we plan for careers of tomorrow. So we'd like the UpGrad brand to be known as that if UpGrad has chosen this, a data science course, which now 5 years back was quite visionary, today everyone's doing that, or a machine learning or an artificial intelligence course, which today is also second parlance. So as we go forward, if we can preempt the right careers of tomorrow courses, that's a benchmark we'd like to create.
I also understand, Ronnie Screwvala, that you're entering the business of B2B. What is that all about? And I can see the obvious synergies and the extension, but give us the details here, whatever it is that you can share with us.
So I think enterprise and corporates is a very, very important part of the constituency. I think the present pandemic, what it has done is 2 things. It's brought, again, a lot of sense of awareness and acceptability to online. From universities, faculty, professors, and principals, to the corporate world, to parents and spouses of people who otherwise would have done online, people start understanding that. The downside and the caution factor for me today is that most people actually think it's just a one-way system where a professor is sitting, put a camera and run a class of 30. That can't be further from the truth, and that'll be a very short-lived online learning experience because it's not about content. The entire element of learning experience that goes behind that is the most important. So that's one element that I want you to understand, which is therefore that none of this is effective unless corporations and employers understand and accept online education. So for us to engage with enterprise, which is companies, anywhere they have their training needs. Today, 99% of the students or learners, I would call them, because they're all working professionals that come to UpGrad, pay for the course themselves, not their companies. In normal course, it should be quite the reverse. Companies should be saying, hey, let me send you on a course. And guess what? I don't need to send you off for a year. You can continue your work and do this course. That is really the game changer across for companies and enterprise to accept online as the very viable and very acceptable medium of learning as much as offline, because they'll experience the learning experience. 80% completion of courses is unprecedented in the online space. We take out anonymity from education completely, which means that you can't just be a dropout. So if you look at some of these things, that's what we're building for the future.
You've also said at the course of this interview that you're going overseas. Where all are you going overseas? By when is that going to happen?
It's already happened. We already have a chief executive officer for our APAC region, and we have a chief executive officer for our Middle East and UK version, and we're just about in the process of talking to people for the US. So we see the low-hanging fruit to be Southeast Asia, markets like Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines on one side, the Middle East and Northern Africa, which is Egypt, on the other side. That's where we feel it's still at an infancy stage. The beauty about online is it's not like the Western world is 5 years, 15 years, or 25 years ahead in the first place. So technology and learning experience is going to be defined by a few companies around the world. And we therefore see our geography mapping into the emerging markets or the markets that are nascent and will take a little bit more of market making. And then the Western countries like Europe, UK, and the US and Australia, where you don't need to create that market, but you need to see the shift between online and offline. Because education is no longer an event that, oh, I spent the first 22 years, now I'm done with that part of my life. I think people have to start accepting that, which they are. The only difference is they don't need to go back to school or back to college. They can now do it with technology.
I'm going to make this my last question, Ronnie Screwvala. I believe you've had cumulatively 38,000 paid learners. Average is about 2.5 lakh rupees for an 11-month course. Now, as a country which is believed to be obsessive with cheap products, free products, and all of that, has it been a challenge at all to get your target audience to part with money, especially when, you know, they're not in college and they're not in school and the typical education part of their life is over? How big a challenge has that been?
It's a huge challenge. I have to say it's a complete huge challenge because we're creating a market. Does everyone know that they need to be a lifelong learner? Not. Even if they accept that, do they feel I need to do it this year? Not. So bringing a sense of urgency into the decision making before a crisis occurs and creating a market and being pioneering is something that is extremely exciting and extremely exhausting. And I think that's pretty much at that place where we are. It is very challenging, especially when you're looking for an ARPU, which, as you said, was 2.5 lakhs in a country where, whether it's telecom or content, we're one of the lowest ARPU countries in the world. However, education is not something you want to discount. So it's not that if I drop my price, I'll get 3 times the students. People have to value that because not only are they paying, but for the next 11 months, they have to work for it. So it is a challenge, but I think we're moving in the absolute right direction as people slowly start. And all these segments that you pioneer, either you're really before your time and you better know it, but we're pretty clear we're not before our time, or you have to find that inflection point and work for it. And you have to be part of being in multiple places at multiple times so that just twice you're in the right place at the right time. And that's what we plan to do.
With that, Ronnie Screwvala, I'd like to thank you for being so candid and joining us here on this edition of the Startup Central, a day after the acquisition was announced to get into test prep. Another 3 have been lined up, and I hope you'll be back on the show once those acquisitions are also announced.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned. We've got a lot lined up for you on the other side. EdTech is certainly the buzzword in the COVID world. Unacademy became a unicorn recently. Now it has hit a valuation of $2 billion. That and more coming up.